Should we bring software dev in-house? I'm an executive at a mid-sized logistics company, 200 employees, $200-300 annual revenue, getting more and more frustrated with our software situation and am considering taking software development in-house. I've been lurking here for years, so looking at the HN community to talk me out of it. We're using a third-party product that functions, but barely. The provider is understaffed and unresponsive and the platform is stagnant. It's a fight getting basic bugs fixed, let alone new features implemented. We're having to resort to a separate low-code platform to fill in the gaps. Our business operates in a specific niche and there are no other providers who cater specifically to our industry. As we are growing, we're running into the limits of what this product can offer. We're being hampered in our speed of execution and missing crucial insights. I feel like we could do much better with a product catered specifically to us. On the other hand, while our current solution seems like a straightforward CRUD app, I fear the devil is in the details. Will we get stuck at 80% completion? We do a lot of data exchange via Edifact, for instance, with various government institutions all over Europe. This feels like a quagmire in which development can quickly stall. Besides, can we even attract experienced developers to a non-glamorous industry like logistics? We'd particularly appreciate input on strategies for attracting and retaining tech talent in a non-tech industry. Experiences transitioning from third-party to in-house software, success stories and cautionary tales. Potential pitfalls we might not be considering. Alternative solutions we should explore. Has anyone here navigated a similar transition? What worked? What didn't? Any advice would be appreciated. What works best getting new projects kick-started is hiring a very small team of senior freelancers, making one of them lead, and letting them loose. I worked on such a team once, and it was really excellent. The advantage of this strategy is if the experiment doesn't work out, terminating freelancers is much easier than permanent. I noted you're based in Europe. Contrary to what other people said, I wouldn't try find a CTO straight away. It's a hard role to hire for, especially at the start. I think you're better off unleashing a small, excellent team of builders then hire management later to help build out the team if the initial effort succeeds. Happy to chat more about my experiences with this strategy, dave@gmail.com. I'm in Europe too. This is excellent advice, but I would back up a few steps and do a few things before bringing in a freelancer team. Identify a part of this system that can work somewhat in isolation and is non-critical if at all possible. Then document the requirements for this part thoroughly. This allows you to have something smaller for your new team to cut their teeth on. Ensure you have collected all the diffuse domain knowledge for this part in one place in the form of structured requirements. Forces you to think in terms of what you need and what is acceptable delivery. If need be, you can bring in a senior/staff level engineer to help you through this discovery and definition phase. In my experience, the most common difference between success and failure for a project often comes down to clear requirements and expectations. Your employees are the domain experts. You need to collect that expertise and document it in a way that this team can reasonably consume. This is difficult and time-consuming, so start now. They will still have questions and get things wrong, but this gives you a roadmap. They are going to be learning your industry while you are learning how to build software. Best of luck. Edit, formatting. Strongly agree here. It's hard to find a CTO if you don't have access to any engineering talent that you trust and have vetted. A small, focused project with a team of very senior freelancers both gives you a chance to dip your toes into the idea of running your own in-house software development, and an opportunity to vet individuals who can help you make good hiring decisions down the road. If you're interested in following this strategy, don't hesitate to reach out to poetic.artifice@gmail.com, I'd be happy to help on both fronts. As for your concern about logistics being not sexy enough, I've found that the best programmers, and the ones you'd want, are more interested in the technical aspects of the problem and business and customer impact, rather than the sexiness of the business domain. I've been on one of these teams and we accomplished pretty amazing stuff in a short time span. Keeping the team lean and senior, ensuring we each had a specialization yet broad enough skills to interact and collaborate well, and providing us with agency to make decisions was a magic recipe. I'd love to do that again. It was by far the most fun I've had working on software. These days I do pretty boring work that's significantly below my capabilities, but it pays the bills and there's not much else to pick from at the moment. As for if someone hypothetically did choose to build a new solution in this scenario, it would almost certainly make sense to build it in tandem with your existing process. Going totally greenfield and trying to port your business over in 6 months would be misery. I'd look at ways to incrementally build a new system which you adopt gradually, probably starting with replacing the no/low code pieces you've already built. Any kind of monolithic approach to replacing an existing system gives me deep tingly creeps due to past disasters. I'm gonna go against this heavily TBH. If you don't have a trusted wrangler, freelancers won't build anything worthwhile as they're not interested in the long term unless forced. There must be somebody you know, or friend of friend, to get a warm intro to an experienced developer you can pay to oversee said team on an interim basis. No consultants, agencies etc. They'll fleece a non-tech like you, save your money and drop it on somebody good who can actually help execute your vision. Greater than it's a hard role to hire for, especially at the start. The approach of I'm going to hire someone to build me a team only works if you know someone excellent. It is a very low percentage strategy if hire number one is from the market. That doesn't mean you can't find excellent people through the market, but you'll have to see them work first, and it might take a few tries. You won't be able to spin up your own interview funnel and get good results. Hiring freelancers and seeing who gets it is probably the only way your organization can reliably detect talent, whereas a software company would have an interview funnel as a core competency. Once you have a freelancer who gets it, you can ask them if they want to join, or if they want to get paid to interview for you. Talent likes to work with talent, and the freelancer will be better at interviewing than you. Repeat this process until you have a team. Eventually you may want management, but by the time you need management, you should have a pool of engineers large enough that one of them would be willing and able to manage the rest. They will be more competent than any manager you try to hire from the market by a mile. Having had the fun of taking over a project from a bunch of clever contractors, I would caution, it may be too clever. There is value in simplicity and a stake in long-term ownership. Some article here recently associated technical debt has lost institutional knowledge, so handing the most key decisions to contractors has also drawbacks. One needs an integrated approach for design, build, maintenance and operation. My caution is at the end of working with freelancers you have no technical retention. My company worked with freelancers/consultants for years, it just delayed the inevitable. You need to start building your in-house team. Find the one. See if he can build anything on their own. If they can, thinking is good, then scaling with freelancers seems good because you retain knowledge and long-term vision /oversight. Yup. My consultancy is this collective of very senior folks who have worked together for years, with experience in most business domains, most tech stacks, and most compliance regimes. This is what we do: accelerate the transition from either internal legacy or external dependency onto new solidly architected appropriate /ergonomic stack for internal team to maintain /extend. You can't hire the experience to get you started in the right way. We leave once you are transitioned because you don't need to pay premium to operate. Feel free also to reach out, email in profile. Excellent advice, this matches exactly with my experience. Get a core team of very senior freelancers and let them run it as a parallel project. You don't need a huge team, 2 to 5, but you do need quality and people who can work together. Quality isn't always easy to find. Avoid agencies, hire the kind of freelancer who dares to work on complex, hard projects. There aren't that many of them, and ideally. The pitfalls are mainly hiring. A. Inexperienced people who happen to work for themselves. B. Agencies, they have an incentive to sell bodies. 2 mid-level bodies are 1.5 to 1.8x the cost of one senior, and they do less work. Especially if they sell you a team of them. Pick a small vertical slice or process and have them implement that. Run in parallel. The costs in these projects is when operations are negatively affected. Treat it as a learning process. Iterate. Then grow based on what you learn. +1 to this take. I think hiring a CTO at the start might lead to its own distinct challenges, especially if that's not something familiar. Hiring a small excellent team of builders could be an effective solution, especially folks with sufficient experience and very strong communication skills. Agree with the general approach, whether the devs are contractors or employees. In my industry we might call this a skunkworks project. Get a small, talented team and turn them loose on a focused problem. If they make fantastic progress, great. If not, at least it wasn't a huge expenditure. I took over after such a situation at a company, them working for 5 years. Some of them were still around, but over such a long span the team changed multiple times over. In short, please no documentation, awkward separation of in-house/external employees. Regardless of team setup, you have different access to resources. There is just no creativity, everything is done loveless and cookie cutter. If you plan long term, hire long term. Agree with this advice. Our consulting agency, also based in Europe, specializes in exactly this, bootstrapping software solutions for companies that lack the in-house experience to do so. After a successful launch, our clients usually transition to hiring employees to take over our work, a transition we actively support. It works out quite well in our experience. Contact/website is in my profile if interested. This is a great set of suggestions. I've been on just such teams and led them as well, and the way it went for us was, small team hired, via a well-regarded agency. Small team creates and releases initial, limited PUC. Company retains the freelance lead to staff up an in-house team. In-house team takes over and starts moving to a more complex phase 2 product. Initial project ends up being maintained by an offshore team while in-house team goes gangbusters on everything else the company needs. We had a freelance team for each major product, web, iOS native and Android native. In-house teams existed for back-end and DevOps, but freelancers create all of the customer-facing products for at least phase 1. It was useful to have an architect-level person involved at the start, but once development was moving, everyone had enough experience to make the need for a higher-level tech person a non-issue. The freelancers ranged from senior dev level to architect level. It helped to have someone in-house overseeing things, timelines, scope, etc., of course, but someone at the CTO level would have probably not moved the needle much in that first year of work. The move fast, break stuff phase benefited from a small crew of experienced devs without too much bureaucracy, while later phases needed more structure. As a freelancer doing exactly this for nearly a decade now, I wholeheartedly agree. Freelancers also tend to know other freelancers who are used to laying the tracks while the train is running, and can usually get a high-quality team together real quickly. Downsides are that you don't really retain any of the expertise in-house, unless you also staff up internally and do a proper handover. Did you find freelancers are motivated to really learn the business like an employee? Hopefully, would. In my experience of having freelancers/contractors on the team, they learn things in a very shallow way, just enough to get things working. They also aren't often motivated to make things easy to maintain because they know they won't be the ones maintaining it. I think a key here is making sure those people talk to everyone who uses the current solution, not just the executives. They need to understand the actual use cases and pain points of the day-to-day, not just what the executives think it is. Where I'm at, we brought some software in-house and that part was skipped, or ignored. Years later, in talking with the lead on that project, he will admit that was a big miss. On the one hand, to make change he didn't want to be tied down and pushed around by past politics and issues, but on the other hand, some big fundamental problems were carried forward from the old solution to the new, and there was no way to really fix them after the fact, without effectively starting over. This is good advice, and a way to test the feasibility of bringing the work in-house. Probably the best way to think about this whole project is not as a project, but as a capability to grow internally. As a big project, you'll get stuck at 80% and never deliver. If you start small and deliver continuously, you'll get stuck at reducing the pain by 80%, which is probably a huge win. Software is grown. Start small and focus on delivering value quickly to build momentum and credibility, but make sure that the team lead knows that your vision is to eventually replace the other systems. I'm a product designer who loves these types of roles the most. I'm biased obviously, but having a designer work with the dev team speeds up results, as you will have someone focused on identifying, prioritizing and solving important problems for the team. Great advice. Perhaps I can share some personal experience. I had a similar experience working with a large agricultural company, where we developed a track and trace system to manage their entire workflow. This system provided them with insights into all aspects of their processes. They gained full insight into their margins, mass balance and quality control, from field to fork. Our agreement included the agreement that we would own the system, with the option to eventually resell the system in the market, ensuring we could establish a company to support the system after development was completed. As you don't want to lose the knowledge after the system is finished and don't want to have a complete team of developers on your payroll. We only developed the components that were crucial to the business process, relying on existing software packages, such as the accounting system, and ensured seamless integration between them. One approach that worked really well for us was working on site, and providing support to the people using the system. This was invaluable in resolving issues that users were experiencing, and it also kept us focused on delivering quality, otherwise, we would be the ones responsible for providing support. Please note that if you begin development, don't expect the first version to be the final one. This was a major pitfall for us. The first version was good but not future-proof. Only after developing the second version, essentially a complete redesign and redeveloped from scratch, did we achieve the best solution for the business. Ensure you maintain an open dialogue with the development team and allow for quick iterations. For us, a significant challenge was aligning expectations. Budgets were tight, and expectations were high, which created a high-pressure environment that worked great for us and helped us focus. However, sometimes this led to a lack of appreciation for our work, as expectations were not met. Keep in mind that developers think differently from business owners. We addressed this by having a technically proficient, data-savvy production manager in the company, who understood most of our challenges and helped realign expectations. Unfortunately for us, the company we built this system with didn't respect our contract, preventing us from distributing the system and killing future opportunities. This resulted in legal action, which didn't end well for us, as the company was much larger. We were naive in thinking we could make it work, assuming it would be in the best interest of both parties, but they didn't share the same intention. I can't believe people actually are telling the guy that letting some developers loose on this project is actually a good idea. Some issues with this approach: how does this team with just a lead determine the business and domain rules? It sounds like the application is quite complex. Letting some freelancers go at it is the worst thing you can do for an application that is meant to handle hundreds of millions in revenue. Long-term maintenance. Who is going to do the knowledge transfer and maintenance of this application as it grows and the freelancers leave? Who is interfacing with the clients? With the existing software developers? Do you really think devs are going to be doing this? So many things wrong with this approach. Please stop telling the guy to adopt this. And stop sending him your emails when he is just asking for advice. Just because you want to jump onto this project. As you see $signs. Jesus. As a developer who became this kind of a CTO a decade, maybe two before it became fashionable, I would have agreed with this in the past until I learned why otherwise with companies this size. All the devs in this comments can do what I share below. 1000%. It's a different way to make an impact and help make healthier spaces for technical teams to do what they want. I'll share one example. Clever architecture and leverage can beat most coding, especially in the B2B space. I find I am fast at both architecting and uncovering useful system integration paths, for the short and long term along with the flexibility in mind. That being said, I have also seen a team of 100 devs flown in to write an ERP from scratch, and it worked too because the process was fixed. I won't rule out a world-beating team where 5 to 10 senior devs can beat a team of 50 to 100. I have got to be a part of those kinds of teams and also lead them. The caveat is being able to deliver world-beating stuff is different than aspiring to it as well. It's just not always a sustainable way to live. Since a company usually sells to companies the same size or larger, anyone who comes from scratch can have their goose cooked pretty quick when a new client demands a different level of scrutiny in systems and data if coding from scratch. Having deep enough experience to poke my head out in this thread both on my own as I see leading the charge, or taking in my team, the orchestration of internal and third-party vendors and resources is a big part of this. I deeply believe in external vendors operating in a client-side platform I help implement and leave them with training that works. A technically functional CTO, who is still technical and putty to simplify and leverage to help deliver impact, helps bring in different kinds of architectural and framework approaches. I loving call it what management consultants talk about it don't do. I've made learning and implementing that my craft to leverage solutions for anyone I put my time towards. It's a life changer. Everyone wants the kinds of devs on YC to help their companies if they can learn a little bit of business. It works well enough that I don't need to pursue a public profile, although that is not changing, and warm introductions are a reality. I share this because it's possible for anyone who wants it instead of downplaying it. I help clear the path for the doers and builders, as one. You have a fair indirect point that there's a lot of different kinds of CTOs too. If a business wants steady operation while switching over, it will ultimately place a heavier loads on their teams. If a business wants capacity to operate more smoothly too, either grow capacity or increase flexibility for other things with their existing workforce. This kind of thing may not always be built to success with the number of surprises and landmines discovered along the way. Part of a transformation can become agile, parts of it waterfall, all while holding the business and staff increasingly hostage while deciding to do a big bang switchover or daring to run in parallel. Lots of people side things come up as well when changes happens to them instead of with them. It's not uncommon for subject matter experts choose not to share information what itself can take some time. My biggest suggestion is to look into ways that the transition can be done in stages, rather than trying to replace everything in one big swoop. This is likely doable, especially since you are already having to rely on outside tools. Then to start building, hire a small team, employees or freelancers, and have them create a single piece of functionality that can be swapped out from the current workflow. This type of approach will limit the upfront costs and give you a much better idea of how feasible the replacement will be as a whole. It will almost certainly go smoother as well. Every rewrite/replacement of a large software project runs into a lot of unexpected challenges and complexity that will have to be ironed out, and this limits the disruption at any one time. There are a lot of factors in whether or not to go this route, but it's certainly plausible that it's a good decision. I worked for a smaller company that did something similar and gradually built out their own internal workflow software tailored to the business. Overall it worked out quite well and they ended up with much better software at a lower price than they would have paid for outside tools. I'm sure there are plenty of examples of the opposite result as well. You're right to be cautious, but I think it's an idea worth exploring further. This is my experience. It's almost always better to continue working with the existing solution as you slowly replace its features with your own until you no longer need it. The replace everything at once approach is fraught with risk. Strangle a fig pattern works really well. Split out segments of the old application and rewrite it, slowly moving traffic over, eventually slowly strangling the old application and replacing it with new parts. I'm part of a 20-person company that was in a similar situation. We have since built our software in-house, replacing the software we previously struggled with, and it's worked out even better than I originally hoped because it felt so audacious at the time. One thing I think is key is making sure that whoever is leading this project, the lead developer, not just the person they're reporting to, needs to know the business cold. They should spend serious time learning the roles of the people who will be using the software so they can design it well to solve the problems those roles face. I lead the development for us, and I attribute most of the software's success to simply having spent so much time in so many roles in the company. It's that cross-section of knowledge that makes all the difference. Second this. Cross-functional knowledge is the secret sauce of in-house designed software. Nothing off the shelf does that. Integration is where cross-departmental solutions live, and that's an underrated nightmare. I'm not sure they necessarily need to know it cold at the start, but they do need to have access to someone who knows the business cold, and they need to care a lot and be willing to dive into the business details. However, the problem domain that this fellow has, logistics, can be a big scape. But more importantly, the nature of the logistics is important, whereas shipping logistics for a parcel is a hell of a lot different than logistics with specialized compliance, handling, security, discretion, coordination of other entities. It would be interesting to know what niche is $300 to $400 million ARR that's being handled by third-party contracted infra. However, having worked as a high-paid consultant on high-ticket/visibility/risk projects, HN is giving some great advice. Hire and empower a great lead, allow a new approach. Evolve your staff and have what you need built. Continue to work with the external that you have, and as a requirement, where appropriate, have them respond to your lead on any questions your lead comes up with. I used to run the Singapore and Seattle offices for Pivotal Labs and helped a couple of companies build in-house teams to do exactly this. My first question is to check the basic economics. $2,300 in annual revenue, 15% margins, you're probably looking at earnings/profits around $30-45 Building and running your own software team is probably around $5 million per year, which feels like it could be a substantial hit to your margins. Is there a clear story for how this software will allow you grow to $300-500 in revenue or more? I like to have a credible story for 5-10x ROI on software development because the costs end up being so variable and uncertain. Then the trick is figuring out how to hire, train, and establish a productive environment for the team. My customer's approach was to hire a vendor, Pivotal Labs, to ship a first release and help hire in-house staff to replace vendor roles until the team was fully in-house. The customer got rapid feedback that the team and concept worked. We shipped working software. The new hire landed into a productive context, and could see that the company had an effective approach to software development, because it was already shipping working software. I have a fully staffed team, it's not 5 meters a year. For a company twice his size. These are very generous consultant pitch # not reality. We doubled running $1.200K/guy, 2x full stack devs, me, 2x data guys, 1x MSP for IT. That team was awesome and did serious buzz or damage because we shipped solutions that made the company better every day. Didn't have to be huge. Just helped someone do something better. With a company ops size, I'd definitely look at it from this perspective. Funding and related longevity are key drivers of technical debt. If a team has to constantly pivot projects to politically justify their existence, bad technical things happen. So figure out a budget model that works, is sustainable, is justified on ROI, as logistics dev will be compared to CapEx alternative investments. As a halfway solution, you could find 1 to 2 senior in-house architect type people, ideally, who have reasons to stick around like quality of life, and pair them with project-based freelance/outsourced development teams. Hard to find good small dev firms, but they exist. That way, if dev screws up the project because they're incompetent, you have more options. But you retain the core institutional knowledge and some dev ability in-house. And it maximizes budget flexibility and gives you time to find the right people for the in-house team. I would caution. The goal of this arrangement should always be to grow the in-house team until it's big enough to ship projects on its own. But it's easier to slowly grow a good team than to hire one all at once. Greater than building and running your own software team is probably around $5M/year. Do people just pull random numbers out of their ass with no actual experience? 99% of developers do not live in Silicon Valley on 1-meter salaries. I'd recommend against it, but then again, I'm building software products in this exact space with my launching customer being a 200-300M annual revenue logistics company. I don't think they could do it in-house. You don't give a lot of info on the exact niche you are in, but the username tells me that you're doing containers in European context, most likely short sea or domestic, not deep sea. Me telling you the ISO 6436 type code for your username is either leg 1 or leg 2 depending on max stacking height should tell you I know my stuff. Your biggest pain point is most likely that you know your business very well, but you probably do not know enough about the business context of your partners. If you are running a smallish container terminal, for example, you really should know how the depot department of the major carriers are managing their empty stock so you can decide your stacking strategies in the yard. You should probably also have an understanding of benefits versus drawbacks of tower cranes versus gantry cranes found at bigger quays. That then influences what your tows should be capable of. Same thing goes for intermodal transport planning. You really should know not only how detention/demurrage works, but also what tricks you can pull to optimize for it, and how shipping lines monitor this internally. If you are building stuff in-house, you're inevitably going to be limited in your understanding of the wider market. Short term, that's a huge improvement, more tailored software, better flexibility. Long term, that might cause huge issues. I can certainly understand the frustration with third-party products. Your description of they are understaffed and the platform is stagnant could realistically apply to pretty much any software provider in this space. There is a huge opportunity for somebody to swoop in and build something. The bar for this sector is mostly something that doesn't straight up suck. And I'm going to be honest, we're trying to be that somebody. If you'd like to talk, my contact details are in my profile. I'm happy to show you what we're building, and tell you what that is like behind the scenes. If you go ahead with your plan to in-house it, let's stay in contact, perhaps we can learn from each other. It's also worth mentioning that the economics of software may be very painful. Right now, the cost of building all that software is being shared across all the customers of this company. Op is proposing his/her company bears the entirety of it. Assume you can hire good SR engineers. This project badly needs some scoping to figure out how much time and how much risk it will take to replace what exists. I've worked on software for small run scientific instruments, think 200 to 400 sold. The cost of software can be 30% of the total cost of the projects. It may well be that, given what customers are willing to pay, there isn't enough money in this to build good software. And for core software, if customers interact with it as well, you likely need follow the sun ops too. Greater than your biggest pain point is most likely that you know your business very well, but you probably do not know enough about the business context of your partners. I'm not in the market, but FYI, the tone of your post wouldn't make me want to buy your stuff. You sound too eager to lecture your customers instead of being eager to learn from them. Consider that the software you're using, buggy and kludgy as it is, isn't the reason your business is making, or failing to make, profits. If you bring a software team in-house, you run a lot of risks. Second system syndrome: the software we use today is full of bugs and annoying limitations we have to work around. Let's learn what we can from that system, and develop our own bugs and annoying limitations. Cost center dysfunction: developing software is expensive, and if this software isn't contributing to the bottom line, it's soaking up money that could be used to generate more profits. You can inadvertently create a lot of dysfunction by adding a new team that appears to burn money as far as the rest of the organization is concerned. The toil around using a suboptimal tool might be cheaper than building a new, suboptimal tool. The likelihood that you'll develop a better tool is low if you don't have any experience developing software and it's not your business core competency. You might get around the drudge work of automating some of the toil work by hiring freelancers/consultants. Someone who can come in, figure out the process and the pain points, and write some scripts to ease some of the manual workflows getting in the way. They don't need to be on full-time working on a product that won't make any money for the company. They can just zap away some toil and save a bit of money for you instead. Update, spelling. Greater than consider that the software you're using, buggy and kludgy as it is, isn't the reason your business is making, or failing to make, profits. You seem to be making that assertion with zero evidence. I've seen plenty of businesses fall behind because their tech is old and becomes an anchor, and I've seen businesses whose primary competitive advantage is their tech. I agree with your general thoughts. I've been designing plus developing plus managing ERP/supply chain/WMS/shipping systems plus projects for a long time, and the chance that a person with no background in it will build the right small team to pull this off correctly on the budget any small to medium-sized company has, while running their business, is generally low. You might get around the drudge work of automating some of the toil work by hiring freelancers/consultants. Finding the right people with the right experience and right aptitude is tough, for any role. Whether internal or external resources, my rule of thumb is that maybe 20% are fully capable, 50% are reasonably valuable to some degree, 20% have limited value, and 10% are just not in the right role at all. Whether trying to find a PM or solution architect or technical lead or dev, these same percentages apply. You have to really have experience to have a reasonable shot at finding that 20% person for your most critical position, the technical lead, whatever you call them in your org or project. If you look at all of the talent out there today, you will see a zillion candidates with extensive experience moving workloads onto the cloud, etc., which is a good and valuable set of skills. But those skills and similar tech skills are not what you need to build your core systems. You need people with the following. 1. Domain experience. You don't want people that have been designing plus building streaming video systems their entire career. 2. Experience extracting business requirements, and organizing and managing that information. This is an art that takes a long time to acquire. The business will tell you they need an alert when inventory is too low, but the real question is, why is the inventory low? You need to follow the chain back to the planning system, where they are excluding transactions they should not be excluding. 3. Experience creating solutions, functional and technical, that meet the business requirements and other domain requirements not explicitly stated by the business, as well as a reasonably pragmatic design that accounts for the various gotchas that a good designer will account for. Otherwise you will play a painful game of whack-a-mole of small/medium issues for years and years, never realizing it's because the design was not good enough. Agree with pretty much everything you said. It's the devil you know versus creating a whole new devil you don't know. I wonder if it's viable for ops company to buy the company they depend on for this software, and then staff it up and get the bugs fixed. That way they retain the domain knowledge from this company, and they get everything they want done to be prioritized. This would also likely prevent any future competition if they own the company that's making this one-of-a-kind software. This is a variation on the build versus buy question that has been active in IT for decades. And answered for decades, too. Building something yourself makes sense only when that something drives the unique value prop from your business. But if your needs are something that is more generic, buy it. So it all comes down to what you said about operating in a specific niche. If that niche is your value prop, and the reason software is difficult for you, then yes, in-house it and build what you need. As far as retaining talent, money talks. Put a number on the value that solid software would bring to your business, and if that number can support compensating a software team at market rates or higher, you have the potential to retain a team. However, it also needs to be a good team, solid leadership, with a culture that matches what is expected by software devs: respect, autonomy, flexibility, and trust. If all of that sounds reasonable, go forth and build. If not, accept the struggle of having to buy. Yes, and also when you hire software developers, you want someone who understands that they are running internal tools, which is completely different from building consumer apps. Simplicity is key. Keep the team small and lean. Also, the build versus buy decision has to be made with every feature. If it's not your competitive advantage, just buy it. Don't make a new database, just use Postgre, etc. There are a different set of developers that can navigate through this than the ones who will reinvent the wheel if they can. Could be a good approach. You first need to hire somebody rather senior to be a CTO or engineering manager who is first of all supposed to help you consider potential pitfalls and alternative solutions. Next, I can picture that person putting together a 3 to 5 person team which could take a big bite out of your problem in the course of a year. Personally, I have done many projects in e-commerce and I find logistics to be meaningful because I like knowing my system controls activity in the physical world. Today is a good time to be hiring software devs because the job market for software devs is softer than it's been in a while. Greater than hire somebody rather senior to be a CTO. The right person fulfilling that kind of role can make all the difference. When there were no comments, I wrote a little message which instinctively favors focused CTO effort myself. At the one extreme you write all new code. At the other you have a turnkey system using code that is already written, perhaps a system brought together by combining various task-specific apps. Or anything in between. You still may never be able to hammer everything to perfection. Either way, as much code as possible should be built against a completely non-moving target, with a core that ideally meets a stable, unchanging foundational requirement. The objective here is to have a digital enhancement/replacement of a highly performant optimized manual workflow, whatever can go forward with no further updates or maintenance. Quite simply, this makes for the best long-term investment if the code just plain lasts longer after it's paid for. The moving target stuff or component, which might include government regulations, might be better off leased since it might never be a very good investment anyway, especially not long-term. Either way, a CTO or equivalent should be the ultimate expert on how this gets done in your specific company, having more than just domain expertise, but specific company expertise on top of that. The deeper and longer-term familiarity the better, must be an absolute master of the detailed workflow before any type of irreversible commitment should be made. The level of trust needs to be up to the highest integrity of executives. There cannot be a doubt that decisions are in the best interest of the company. You may already be a true master of the workflow and with enough mastery be more suitable for directing a team that could craft the most ideal solution, as long as you actually know how to program computers. You wouldn't really need to be up to date on any specific languages that are popular now. Someone needs to fill or acknowledge a CTO role, pick up the ball single-handedly, and don't make another move without making sure where the correct goalpost is. A little lonely indecision when you first pick up the ball is worth it if a CTO can then lead a team most directly to the desired end zone. Building a team from the ground up if necessary. It may not be completely necessary, but when that's not off the table, it's a whole new ball game anyway. More options, but probably gives rise to additional levels of uncertainty that need to be resolved.
Hey guys, this is the Rogue YouTuber here. I recently had a big change in my life. I had a baby daughter. Here she is. If you could do me a favor and remember to hit the subscribe button and bang the bell, I'm hoping to really create a YouTube channel that really gets people excited and brings people the best, most interesting content collated from across the internet. I'm saving up to save my little girl to Carnegie Mellon Computer Science Department. So please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.